So now we'll go through the series of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So if you just go through Wikipedia, you'll see an image. There's a temple of Patanjali, and the Patanjali is seated on this coil of serpent on Kundalini. It's a very, very powerful symbol. It signifies Patanjali has mastered the whole Kundalini energy within himself. And he's seated on top of Kundalini. Not that the Kundalini is coiled around his body, but he's seated on top of it. It signifies that he's mastered the whole Kundalini energy within him, even though he is not mentioned about Kundalini in his all of sutras. So we're going to go through this beautiful series. Patanjali, during 1100 BC, systemized the entire system of yoga. Yoga was much, much before that. People were practicing lots of yoga, but they never had a sense of direction. They didn't know how to take it forward. They were all lost. There were not that many asanas then. Asanas is now, which has come up, so many new asanas have come up. So Patanjali is called the scientist of meditation, the scientist of yoga. He's the Einstein of yoga. He systemizes it so beautifully. And this is going to be real pearls for you, because it's going to create a foundation for all the future experiences that you're going to have. It's going to create a base for you to explore all the other dimensions. So the foundation needs to be strong before we move into the territory of the unknown. When we go into the uncharted sea, we need to have a strong ship with us. And Patanjali's sutras are this ship which is going to take you sail through this uncharted sea. So we're going to go through Samadhi Pada. So before I begin, I keep Patanjali as my Sakshi, as my witness. I feel his presence here right now. I'm not going to interpret exactly what he was trying to say, because he was trying to address a group of people who are already intellectuals, but also, most importantly, they were highly devoted people. So he was addressing to the people who had this devotion, which is rock-like, very strong devotion to the master, to Patanjali. So when Patanjali used to tell them sit, they used to sit. When they used to tell them stand, they used to just stand. But he was not speaking out of authority. He was speaking out of his complete spiritual conviction that he had. So he was addressing those kind of people. And these people really didn't question that much. They didn't really bought in the whole analysis aspect. Like, why like this? Why are we supposed to sit like this? What is the essence of sitting straight? Why do we have to keep all this spine straight? They never questioned. Whatever he said, they just did it. And that's why they just got it. Because it's always our mind which is always interfering in our experiences. It's our own mind, our own self, always coming in the way. When we are experiencing bliss, when we are experiencing pleasure, the mind interferes and says, oh, I don't know if this is pleasure or bliss. But when you're experiencing some trauma, some negative emotion, the mind confirms it. Yeah, but this is really there, it exists. Because that's how the mind works. It gravitates towards something which is very, very powerful, and negative emotions can be very, very powerful. Negative experiences can be very, very powerful. It pulls us. Okay, the first sutra. Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Now before I move into the sutras, I'll have to ask for your forgiveness because my Sanskrit is not very good. I'm not really a Sanskrit scholar. This reminds me of an incident which just happened in the mountains, in the Himalayas, and I was teaching the same Yoga Sutras, and there was this scholar among all the Westerners. I was surprised to see him wearing very scholarly dress, like I think he was a Brahmin or something like that. And a very good Sanskrit scholar. This is what I understood after I spoke to him after the whole talk. And in between, he just stood up and he's like, how can you speak like this? You don't know Sanskrit. You don't know the pronunciation for that. For that moment, everybody was stunned because For Westerners, they didn't know what was happening. So he really confronted me. So at just that moment, I asked him only one thing. I asked him, have you experienced God? Do you know God? And he didn't have an answer to give. He was quiet. Few seconds passed by. And then I said, listen, if you have not experienced God, if you have not known God, how can you talk about God for the whole of your life? And if I'm talking Sanskrit, I'm just trying to understand out of my own interpretation, and I'm trying to put it across whatever bit I know. It is not important that I have to know it all to actually talk to you. And after all, why are we so much attached to language? Sanskrit was something which was created by, the higher caste of the society, the Brahmins and the higher priestly class. They created Sanskrit, and they call it the language of the gods. And today the Sanskrit is disappearing. 21st century, the Sanskrit is disappearing. People are started to, not learn Sanskrit anymore. Sanskrit has been taken out of so many schools, and it's a beautiful language, there's no doubt about it. But what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter what dialect we use, what language we use. People are so much stuck with a language. Like if you go to a certain country, certain state, if you don't talk to them in their language, they get a bit offended because there's so much attachment to their language, because they feel a sense of pride. After all, it's just a language. And what I believe, to communicate with God needs no dialect, needs no language. It needs the language of silence. It needs a language of emotion, and emotion has no language. So it doesn't matter what language is being spoken, as long as the message is being transmuted, transferred. That is more important. We have to go beyond linguistics, beyond languages. So I'll have to ask you for your forgiveness for my Sanskrit. It's not very, very good, but I will try my best. So the first sutra, Atha Yoga Anushasanam. Now, the exposition of yoga is to be initiated. Now you've been coming for retreats, you've been doing yoga for a long, long time, you've been doing so many practices, but now Patanjali says, now we begin the real practice. All that we have been doing, all the retreats and courses and getting together, was just a preparation. It was just a ground. We were plowing the ground. We were just preparing the whole ground for the seed to start to sprout. We had planted the seed, but now the real work begins. All this time was just a preparation. Now, some of you have been doing yoga for a very, very long time. It's giving you a sense of happiness, calmness, peace, de-stress. A lot of things are happening. But there is a much more bigger hidden reality which yoga is offering, but we are not aware to that. Because we are not available to that. We don't know. We don't know what lies there. Because we only look for certain things. It's like we eat food, we only look for certain taste. And then that's it. That's once our purpose is met and we have experienced that, our experiences end there. But we don't know how to ask for more. So in the inner world, I would say become selfish. Explore a lot. Explore and explore and explore. So now, he says, the exposition of yoga is to be initiated. So now we begin the real work. So now we have to really understand what is happening in our consciousness. So we can use the word consciousness. Everything comes in our consciousness. All our experiences, everything that we do, the past, the present, the future, everything comes in our consciousness. So we need to explore this consciousness. So Patanjali has systemized it. So we can do step by step. So next sutra is Yogasa Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga is a restraint. Nirodha means restraint of the process. Vritti of the mind. Vritti is the mental process. Mind is the chitta. So yoga is a restraint. So what is generally known as restraint is to pull all the senses back. Nirodha is to pull all the senses back, is to stop all the sensory output. All that which is going outward needs to be turned inward. Most of the time, all our energies are going outward, mostly in thinking or trying to smell something on the outside world, trying to eat, trying to taste, all the sensory outputs. So most of our energies is going out into the world. He says now,